My wife Dominique and I are not thrill seekers by any stretch. We're pretty average people. We like hiking, we camp maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and we watch a lot of those wilderness challenge videos online the way most people watch them. From a couch, under a blanket, thinking it looks fun in theory. So when we found ourselves with 2 weeks off at the same time last year and started talking about doing something we'd never done before, the 24-hour wilderness challenge felt like the kind of thing we'd always talked about and never actually done. We figured, why not make it interesting and do it somewhere we'd never be otherwise? We booked flights to Brazil. We were not deep in the Amazon. I want to be clear about that because I don't want to oversell this heading. We were in a guided ecotourism area on the outskirts of the rainforest, the kind of place that is set up specifically for travelers who want the experience of the jungle without too much risk. We had a guide who took us a few miles from a base camp, showed us how to set up a basic shelter, gave us the rundown on what to avoid, and told us he'd be back at the 24-hour mark. He was friendly and professional and clearly knew the area well. Dominique and I both felt comfortable. The first several hours were honestly everything we wanted. Strange birds we'd never heard before, the smell of the place, which is completely unlike anything else, and the feeling of being genuinely small inside something much larger than yourself. We set up our shelter, built a fire as the sun started going down, ate the food we brought, and sat there feeling pretty good about ourselves. We talked about how this would be the best story to bring home. We took pictures on the fire with the tree line behind it. Then it got dark, and the jungle at night is a different place entirely from the jungle in the afternoon. The sounds change completely. Everything gets louder and closer, and the fire feels much smaller than it did an hour before. We stayed close to it and kept talking, and I kept feeding it wood, and it was all fine. A little unsettling the way any wilderness at night is, unsettling but fun. About 2 hours after dark, Dominique grabbed my arm. There was a figure at the edge of the firelight, standing in the tree line, maybe 30 feet from where we were sitting, just standing there. I first thought that it was our guide coming back to check on us, but it wasn't the right build, and our guide had said explicitly he wouldn't be back until morning. My second thought was another traveler who'd gotten turned around, but we hadn't seen or heard anyone else in the area all day. The figure walked toward us and stepped into the firelight and sat down on the opposite side of the fire without a word. He was enormous. I'm 6 feet, and this man was several inches taller than that, and built in a way that made him look like he took up more space than one person should. He was wearing full tactical clothing, dark cargo pants, a long-sleeve fitted shirt, a chest rig with pouches across the front that were clearly not empty, a large fixed blade knife on his hip, and what I'm fairly confident was a holster on his thigh, although I tried not to stare at it long enough to be certain. On his face, he was wearing a mask. A rigid one, dark-colored, that covered from his nose down. His eyes were visible, but they were pointed at the fire. He sat with his forearms resting on his knees, completely relaxed, and didn't say a single word. Dominique's grip on my arm had not loosened since he walked out of the trees. I could feel her trying to read my face for what to do. I had nothing to give her. Every instinct I had was firing at once, and none of them were producing a clear answer, because the man had not done anything. He had walked up to our fire and sat down. That was it. In any other context, that might have been a traveler seeking warmth or company. In this context, with this man wearing what he was wearing, and carrying what he was carrying, and saying absolutely nothing, it was the most frightening thing I've ever experienced. I said hello. I don't know why. It just came out. He didn't respond. Didn't look up from the fire. Didn't acknowledge that I'd spoken at all. Just sat there with his forearms on his knees staring into the flames. Dominique leaned into me and said very quietly that she wanted to leave. I nodded without moving my head much. The problem was that our gear was on our side of the fire, and getting all of it packed up quietly and efficiently while this man sat 8 feet across from us felt impossible. I looked at what we actually needed. Our bag with the essentials, both our phones, and Dominique's jacket, which was next to her. Everything else could stay for now. I told her with my eyes, and she understood immediately. We both stood up at the same time. I picked up the bag, and she grabbed her jacket, and I said to the man that we were going to head out. He didn't move, didn't look up. The fire crackled between us, and he just sat there in total stillness, like we hadn't said anything, like he was completely alone. He walked into the dark. I had the flashlight from the bag, and we moved as fast as we could without running, back along the path toward the base camp. Neither of us spoke for the first 10 minutes. I kept the light ahead of us and didn't look back once, partly because I was so focused on the trail, and partly because I genuinely did not want to see what was or wasn't behind us. We reached the base camp in just under 40 minutes. The staff there took one look at us and immediately got our guide on the radio. We described the man as clearly as we could. The size, the tactical gear, the chest rig, the mask, the knife, and the holster. Our guide went quiet on the radio for a moment and then said he was coming to us right away. He arrived about 20 minutes later. He was visibly concerned in a way he was trying to keep controlled for our benefit. He asked us several follow-up questions about exactly where we'd been camped and which direction the man had come from. He made a call in Portuguese that we couldn't follow. When he got off of the phone, he told us that we'd done the right thing by leaving and that we should stay at the base camp for the rest of the night. He did not tell us who the man was. He did not tell us whether this happened before. When I asked him directly whether we had been in danger, he paused for just a moment too long before saying that he doesn't believe so. We flew home 4 days earlier than planned. The 24-hour challenge lasted about 6 hours. We still talk about it, Dominique and I, but not the way we thought we'd be talking about it on the flight over. Not as the best story we'd bring home, more as the thing we don't fully have an explanation for, sitting silently across a fire from us in the dark, loaded out and masked and completely, utterly still. I'm going to start by saying that this was a widely publicized case, so a few details will be changed, but the main part of this is accurate. A few years ago, I worked at a popular hookah lounge in my town. We had many regulars, so of course I got to know many people and made some lasting friendships with a few. Among those regulars was a group of people I wasn't terribly fond of, except for one girl named Rachel. Rachel was a kind girl whom I enjoyed talking to. I just didn't approve of the people she hung out with or the decisions that she made. But after all, it was her life, so what place did I have to say anything? Eventually, Rachel started dating another regular named Ben, who was part of my friend group. This is when we got a lot closer and she started to trust me and confide in me more. Eventually, Rachel and Ben broke up and it devastated her. I clearly remember her messaging me to hang out and crying on my shoulder for half an hour. During their relationship, she stopped hanging around the shady people as much, but of course afterwards she went back to them and started partying a lot and doing who knows what. She stopped talking to me as much and eventually started dating some other guy in the shady group named Greg. Of course that relationship went south due to reasons unknown to me, but she ended up filing a restraining order against Greg. A few days, I think, later, Rachel went missing and was never heard from again. It was awful. Her family started showing up to talk to me, asking if I'd seen her. I hadn't, but apparently someone told them that she was seen downtown somewhere. It broke my heart. One day during a busy shift, somebody we both talked to sometimes showed up and talked to me about Rachel's disappearance. He told me he'd heard about her being seen somewhere and wanted to know what I knew about it. He even asked me if I heard anything bad happen to her. I'm assuming he thought since I worked at a regular hangout spot of his, I'd hear something. I told him I hadn't, and we hugged before he walked off to talk to other people. Months passed before I heard anything about Rachel. Her family showed up from time to time asking about her, but nothing changed. Around a year after her disappearance, the police had a breakthrough in the case, and her body was found. After some investigating, the police discovered that Greg had hired the same guy who had talked to me earlier to kill Rachel, and he did. He hid her body and continued life as usual. The fact that I spoke to him after the fact, and he even hugged me, still weighs in my conscience. It's been years and I'm still so upset about that. He's in prison now and I'll likely never have to see him again, but it still hurts. I spoke to her family about her, having hugged the man who killed her. I wish I had been a better friend to her. Maybe I could have saved her. Could have insisted that she not hang out with those people. I don't blame myself for her murder, but I do wish I could have done something. Had I been a more insistent friend, maybe she'd still be here. Who knows? All I know is that for whatever reason I ever do see him again, it won't be a good thing for him. He knew she was dead, and he still asked me if I'd seen her or heard anything about her. So, for that, I hope he suffers. I've gone back and forth on whether to post this. Not because I'm embarrassed or because I think people won't believe me, but because writing it out means I have to put it in order again, and putting it in order is what makes it the most disturbing. When it was happening, it was scattered enough that I could rationalize each piece. Laid out start to finish, it doesn't have a lot of room for that. This was about 18 months ago. I live in a quiet suburb, kind of neighborhood where everybody has a front lawn and a driveway, and the streets are wide enough that kids ride bikes down the middle of them in the summer. I've been here for about 6 years. I know my neighbors reasonably well. Nothing deep, but we wave and we talk across the fence occasionally. and we know each other's names. It's the kind of place where you notice when something is off because nothing is usually off at all. I live alone. I work from home 3 days a week and commute the other 2. I mention the work from home days because they matter later. The first thing happened on a Tuesday morning in early March. I was at my desk in the spare bedroom I use as a home office, about an hour into my workday. My desk faces the window, which looks out over the side yard and the narrow strip of grass between my house and my neighbor Carol's fence. I wasn't looking out the window, just working, but motion in my peripheral vision made me glance up. A man was standing in my side yard. He was just standing there, maybe 20 feet from the window facing the house. Middle-aged, medium height, dark jacket. He wasn't doing anything, not walking through, not looking at his phone, and not appearing to have any clear reason to be in my narrow strip of yard between my house and my neighbor's fence, just standing and looking at the house. I watched him for a few seconds and he didn't move. I stood up from my desk, and by the time I was fully upright, he had turned and walked back towards the street, disappearing around the front of the house. I went to the front window in time to see him walking down the sidewalk, away from my house at a normal pace. He didn't look back. I stood at the window for a minute. My first instinct was that he was checking utility lines or a meter or something, but he hadn't been looking up at anything. He'd been looking at the house straight on. I didn't recognize him from the neighborhood. After a few minutes, I went back to my desk and got back to work. And by that afternoon, I had mostly set it aside. Strange but not alarming. People cut through yards. People stop and look at houses for all kinds of reasons. I didn't think about it again for almost 2 weeks, I'd say. The second thing happened on another work from home day, Thursday. I was in the kitchen making lunch around noon and I heard something at the back of the house. A light sound, brief, like something contacting the back door. Not a knock, more like a single quiet tap or the sound of a hand testing a handle. I went to the back door and looked through the small window set into it. Nobody on the back step. I opened the door and looked out at the backyard. Empty. I checked the door handle, locked as it always was. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looked around the yard and went back inside. That evening I mentioned it to my neighbor Tom across the street when I saw him getting his mail. I described the man I'd seen in the side yard 2 weeks prior. Dark jacket, middle-aged, medium height. Tom thought about it and shook his head. Didn't ring a bell. He asked if I'd seen anything else, and I told him about the sound at the back door that afternoon. He suggested it was probably an animal, like a raccoon or a stray cat bumping against the door. I nodded and said he was probably right and went back inside. I want to be honest about my state of mind at this point. I wasn't scared, but I was mildly alert in the way you get when a couple of small things happen close together, but I wasn't reading it as a pattern yet. I checked my logs that night before bed the way I always did, maybe with slightly more attention than usual, and slept fine. The third thing happened 11 days later. Another work from home day. I was on a video call in the late morning, sitting at my desk, and about 20 minutes into the call, I happened to glance at the window again. The same man was in the side yard. Same spot as before. Same dark jacket. Same stillness, looking at the house. I kept my expression neutral because I was on camera and kept talking for about 30 seconds before I excused myself, said I had a quick situation to deal with, and muted myself. By the time I got to the window, he was already moving, the same as before, turned and walked toward the street without hurrying. I went to the front of the house. He was already at the end of my block walking away. I called the non-emergency police line. I described the man and gave them both dates and the approximate time of the most recent sighting. The officer I spoke to was polite and took the information down. He said they would have a patrol car do some passes through the neighborhood and that I should call back if I saw the man again or if anything else happened. He asked if anything was missing or damaged. I said no. He said to make sure my doors and windows were locked and to consider a doorbell camera. Thanked him and hung up. I ordered a doorbell camera that afternoon. It arrived 2 days later and I installed it myself. Front door coverage, pretty wide angle, motion activated. I also bought a separate, smaller camera for the back door that I mounted above the frame, pointing down at the back step. Both are fed to an app on my phone. I felt better almost immediately after installing them. Whatever this was, I'd have something concrete next time. For the next 3 weeks, nothing happened. The cameras picked up the usual things. Carol's cat crossing the front walk, a delivery driver, and a kid retrieving a ball from a yard. Nothing weird. My alertness faded back to baseline. I started to wonder if the man had just been someone passing through, and maybe someone who'd been looking at houses in the area for some reason, and if the back door sound had been an animal after all. But then one morning I woke up and checked my phone out of a habit, before getting out of bed, flipping through the motion notifications from overnight, the way I'd gotten used to doing. There were 4 from the front camera, all timestamped between 2 and 3 in the morning. I sat up and opened the first one. The front camera had captured a figure standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my house. Not on my property, just on the public sidewalk, but stopped and facing the house. The image quality was decent, but the distance and the darkness made it hard to make out details. Dark jacket, medium height. The second notification was from about 11 minutes later. He was still there, same position. The third was from about 20 minutes after that. He had moved to the edge of my front walk, the point where the public sidewalk meets the path up to my front door. He was standing at the boundary of my property, looking up at the house. The fourth was about 5 or 6 after that. The front walk was empty. I sat in bed with my phone for a long time. 4 motion captures spanning almost 40 minutes. Between 2 and 3 in the morning, of a man standing outside my house in the dark. Not on my property until that last position, but working toward it incrementally over the course of those 40 minutes. I called the police again, this time the non-emergency line, and then sent the footage directly to the email address the officer gave me. A patrol car came by within an hour. 2 officers looked at the footage on my phone, took copies, and walked around the exterior of the house with me. Everything was locked and undisturbed. They told me to keep the cameras running and to call immediately if I saw the man in person again. I asked them directly if they thought I was in danger. One of them paused before answering and said that the behavior was consistent with somebody who was casing the property. I appreciated the honesty. I didn't sleep well that night though, or the several nights after. A little over a week later, on a Saturday morning, I came downstairs to make coffee and found my back door unlocked. I stood in the kitchen staring at it. I had not used that back door in over a week. I checked the back camera app immediately. The footage from the previous night showed nothing. No motion alerts, no figures. I went to the door and looked at the frame and the lock mechanism closely. There were faint scratches around the keyhole that I could not say with certainty were new. They could have been there for months without me ever noticing. I called the police, and this time I asked for someone to come out. An officer spent about 45 minutes at the house. He examined the back door lock and said the scratching was consistent with someone attempting to pick or manipulate it. He could not say definitively when it had happened. He could not say whether whoever it was had successfully got inside at any point. Nothing in the house was visibly disturbed. Nothing was missing, but the lock had clearly been worked on. The officer recommended I replace the lock immediately, which I did that same afternoon. I also had a locksmith reinforce the door frame on both the front and back doors. I bought a motion sensor alarm for the back door that would trigger if it were opened. Here's what I think about most when I think about this. Between the first time I saw that man in my side yard and the morning I found my back door unlocked, 2 months had passed. 2 months of slow, patient, incremental behavior. Standing in the yard, testing the back door, coming back to the side yard weeks later, standing on the sidewalk at 2 a.m. for 40 minutes, working toward the door again. At no point in those 2 months did he do anything on its own that would have gotten him arrested. Each individual piece was deniable or explainable. Taken together, they told a very clear story that was only fully visible in hindsight. I don't know who he was. The police never identified him from the footage. It was never quite clear enough. After the lock was replaced and the door frame was reinforced, and the alarm installed, the activity stopped. Never saw him in the side yard again. The overnight camera has never picked up anyone standing outside since. Whether he moved on to somewhere easier or whether something else changed, I have no clue. What I do know is that for 2 months, somebody was studying my house, learning my schedule, and working toward getting inside. He knew which days I was home. Came to work on work from home days when my car was in the driveway. Except for the overnight footage. Every in-person sighting was on a Tuesday or Thursday. He knew the back door was weaker than the front. He was patient enough to take 2 months doing this quietly rather than just acting. I still check the camera app every morning before I get out of bed. I don't think I'll ever stop doing that. This happened 6 or so years ago now when I was 16 years old. I didn't even realize how unnerving this all was until recently. When I was 15 to 16, I went through a phase where I would constantly get hair extensions put in. I had a favorite hair salon that I always went to. The two ladies were lovely and would always compliment me on my appearance. Stuff like, "Oh, you are such a pretty girl," or "Do you have a boyfriend? Can't believe you were only 15, which made me feel absolutely flattered. However, after my 6th or 7th appointment, they started asking more about why I was single and if I was interested in having a boyfriend, and I would always reply with the whole, "Yeah, when the right one comes along" spill. During an appointment, they started chatting about me being single again. This time, one of the ladies started talking about her brother, and she said that he lives in Africa but that he would absolutely love me and that I should meet him one day. I asked her about how old he was, and she said he was in his early 20s. I was 15. Due to the age gap and the fact that my older brother would have killed me for even talking to a guy in the year above me, I politely told her that I was not interested in meeting her brother, but thanks for the offer. She got visibly upset and said, "Why? Come on, he will look after you. Let him take you back to Africa and he will make you the African queen." I just shook it off because they were always so nice and I just assumed they were joking around. I remember telling a few friends about it and having a laugh. They said I should have taken the offer. It was soon forgotten though. Fast forward about 2 years and I was around 17 years old at this point and I just got my driver's license. It had been a while since I had put hair extensions in and I thought that I would treat myself to change up my look and of course see my old stylist for a catch-up. I went to the salon. It went smoothly. I went from short hair to long hair in a matter of 2 hours and I was on my way. Before I left, one of the ladies asked me if I wanted to come back tomorrow to try out their new hair oil serum for free. So I was like, yes. Nothing is free in this life. Sadly, I was like a moth to a bright light. I went in the next day, super keen for this oil because my hair was super damaged. When I arrived, there was a man in the salon too. I assumed it was their friend. I didn't think too much about it and sat down to get my free serum. The whole time this man was just staring at me, and when I say staring, I mean staring. He didn't say a word the entire time, but just stared and did a strange giggle every time I said something. His vibes were not sitting well with me at all. After they finished up, I just wanted to leave, so I gathered up my things, said thank you very much. Good day, ladies and sir. One of them stopped me on my way out and said, "This is my brother I was telling you about. Oh, let him walk you to your car." Unfortunately, my car was literally 10 minutes away, and I did not want this stranger walking with me for 10 minutes, so I politely declined. They kept insisting and I kept declining. I said no, over and over again. Thank you. I do not need nor want your brother to walk me to my car. Thank you for offering and for your free oil. But bye. I left the salon and started walking. However, I was not alone. The brother was walking 2 meters behind me, and where the salon was located was practically like an alleyway, leading into a car park, leading into back streets. I turned around and told him again that I really didn't need him to walk me to my car. I was very capable. Thank you and bye once again. His reply was short and to the point. No, I come with you. So I walked briskly all the way to where my car was and not a word was said. He literally just walked 2 meters behind me. Sometimes he caught up and would walk next to me. This went on for like 10 minutes. I felt so terribly awkward and uncomfortable and scared as it was getting dark and I couldn't see anyone else. When I was near my car, I had enough of this grown-ass man, so I turned around and said, "I do not need you to follow me anymore. Thank you for walking with me. My car is in this park. Bye." He finally started talking. "Where is your boyfriend?" And me being an incredibly smart woman at age 17 said, "I don't have one." What he said and did next I will never forget. There was an elevator right where we were standing that went to the upper level car park. He summoned the elevator, which I thought was strange. When it reached us, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "You need to come home with me where I will make you my African queen," and grabbed my arm and started trying to drag me into the elevator. Obviously, I started screaming and fight mode kicked in. He was a lot stronger than me as he was a male in his 20s and I was still this small 17-year-old with a fresh weep. But you know what I can do? I can scream. My heart was in my throat. It felt like I was in a movie and I genuinely started bracing for assault in this elevator. An amazing gentleman who must have been in the car park somewhere heard me and ran over, which made the salon lady's brother let go of me and absolutely like it. And he ran away very quickly. So, thank you to the kind man who saved me that day. I do not know what would have happened in that elevator. I teach first grade in a high poverty area. The area has lots of gangs, hard drugs, and prostitution. Just a couple of years ago, the police arrested a woman and several men. The mom had pimped her 2 special needs daughters to the men for money to buy drugs. So it goes without saying, this is not a great area to be alone in, especially after dark. Anyway, it was early September and I had a new student. I'll call her Grace. She was very timid, had low self-confidence, and always seemed nervous. I kept a very close watch on her because I know these can be warning signs of abuse. One Monday, as I took my class outside to play, I noticed strange-looking marks on Grace's legs. Little round indentations marched from her calves to her thighs. She was in shorts. Spots were red and looked painful. I thought she might have some kind of skin rash, so I asked her how she got the marks. Grace told me in a nonchalant way that I was being bad after school on Friday, so Daddy had to take the brush to me again. I was dumbfounded and honestly a little confused. A brush. Then I understood. Her father had beaten her with a bristle brush hard enough to leave indentations on her skin 2 days later. Now, I'm a mandated reporter and I take it seriously. I called CPS and they were there that afternoon to talk to Grace and photograph her injuries. At that point, I am out of the picture and CPS takes over. I don't get updates on the situation, so I had no idea what happened. But Grace never returned to school, but her father did. He showed up one evening as I was preparing to leave the school, about 5:30, parked his truck in such a way that I could not move my car, and then jumped out carrying a baseball bat. He screamed in all kinds of profanities at me about how I'd terrified his daughter because she was in custody, how I was a nosy, worthless human being who didn't know my damn place, and how he was going to show me exactly what I deserved. He meant it too. The man had the cold eyes of a fish, and I knew if he could, he would do serious harm to me. I didn't know what to do. Couldn't really run from him. He was massive and had at least 100 pounds on me, all muscle. If I locked myself in my car, I'd be a sitting duck while he smashed the windows in with the bat, so I said goodbye to my dignity and started screaming for help. Now, I'm petite, but years of teaching have given me the lung power of a megaphone, and I can be very loud. People across the street heard me and came out to see what was happening. The great part of working in a small community is that you know everyone and they know you, especially if you're a teacher. A couple fathers of former students came over to help while a nearby woman called 911. He never did calm down and kept screaming about all the things he was going to do to me for turning him into CPS. Even when the police arrived, he continued this tirade. They arrested him, but I'm not sure what the charges were. I don't think they can get him for assault since he never touched me. For the rest of the school year, I had an armed escort to my car after school. Again, small community, and our police are wonderful people. Interestingly enough, I had someone from one of the local gangs tell me they were keeping a watch because I had taught his little sister earlier and she liked me. That was a surreal moment, let me tell you.